For legal reasons, we have to say it could just be a coincidence that there are the Gape Goons and the violent street gang known as the GG.
Is this possibly a reference to the infamous shock punk artist and subject of a documentary by auteur-director Todd Phillips, G.G. Allen?
Quite possibly. I mean, some of them have been in custody, and they describe themselves as being so far right they're almost on the far left, and so far left they're almost on the far right.
So real adherents of the horseshoe theory, then. Another thing that brought G.G. Allen to mind beyond their name for me was something about excrement that you mentioned in one of your Ilford Reporter articles.
Yes,
Ilford Inquirer.
Well, yes, we'll come to that sooner. First of all, Mr. Richard Miller, I did know Richard Miller. I had worked with him on a professional basis, and at a later date I'd be quite happy to come on and tell you all the things about Mr. Richard Miller that I'd like to tell you. But now all I'm willing to say is that Mr. Richard Miller was undoubtedly the hardest working man in data journalism. The most dedicated,
really?
The most dedicated and totally absorbed in the business of data journalism out of anybody I've ever met.
Are we to assume that his commitment to political activism, specifically working for the Mike Gapes campaign, was of a similar level to his commitment to data journalism?
In all my dealings with Mr. Richard Miller, he was just the utmost professional. On a professional basis, he will always do his best. And I will discuss the investigation, but on a personal level, that's all I've really got to say at the moment. He was the absolute best.
So our reporters were... I don't know what you're laughing about. This is deadly serious. Our reporters were able to speak to Mr. Gapes and a representative of his campaign. And not only did he deny any involvement in, nor any knowledge of, Mr. Miller's disappearance, he also denied that Miller had ever been working for him in the first place. I mean, what do you think is behind this level of distancing?
Well, looking into the Miller files, after Mr. Richard Miller went missing, I received a package anonymously full of thumb drives of encrypted files and notebooks with cryptic clues to the passwords of those files. I'm working my way through them now, but looking at some of the things Mr. Richard Miller was involved in, I'm not surprised Gapes was distancing himself. Some of it's not the Mr. Richard Miller I knew.
Oh.
So there's a lot going on in Ilford South. I'm not sure, and legally I can't say Mike Gapes is involved in it. A lot of his files use code names rather than the real names. Mr. Richard Miller would refer to himself as Little Boy, and there's a lot of references to his employer with the code name Fat Man.
Wow, is Little Boy a nuclear weapons reference? Because obviously Mr. Gapes is a strong supporter of the nuclear deterrent.
Well, if this is going the way I think it is, it will be as explosive as the bomb that hit Hiroshima and killed all those poor people.
What can you tell us about what Mr. Richard Miller was up to in the weeks leading to his suspension? What would you say led Mr. Gapes to just completely cut himself off from Miller in such a way?
Well, there has been a lot of controversy about the Miller Data Centre. It was a church, it was St David's Church. It was transformed with use of £8.7 million of taxpayer money into what Mr. Richard Miller called a world-class NATO-level data centre.
So you can see why Mr. Gapes may have possibly supported the establishment of this establishment.
Yes, I know the council meetings, from what I heard, were very divided on it. Unfortunately, they were closed to the public just for that one occasion. Father Mark Wymark strongly opposed converting a working church into what he called a bizarre personal project. Sadly, he's currently in a coma due to an incident linked to the GG gang, where they ran him over in some sort of small electrical vehicle.
What? Oh, a small electrical vehicle?
How small are we talking here?
Is this like a golf cart?
I'd say slightly larger than a golf cart.
A model train? No, okay, that's
smaller than a regular car.
Okay.
Could only go about, according to the reports, it could only go about 30 miles an hour. Sounds of clinking as it went off. We're not sure if that's, the gears or how that's connected. But yeah, some sort of small electrical vehicle hit Father Mark Wymark in the middle of the street at 3 a.m. Oddly, he was still in his pyjamas and the front door of his house was open.
This is, I mean, a really tragic accident.
Yeah.
The Lord is just cruel sometimes, how he taketh away. Can you tell us anything more, albeit with one of your sources so tragically disappeared? Could you tell us anything more about what was going on at the Miller Data Institute?
Well, yes, residents locally said that after it was transformed into the data centre, it would be humming and green lights would be glowing out at night. Richard said it was from a server farm he had set up in a bell tower. There were also reports of a bunch of gaunt and scared-looking volunteers that people could see through the window bathed in green lights.
Are you sure these weren't just the Gape Gang?
No, the Gape Goons, those are in good shape. These people, they look like they'd seen some things. They look like they hadn't eaten in weeks.
I just heard Gorn tonight pictured the pasty complexions of the rare images I've seen of the Gape Gang. Because obviously they don't like being photographed, so there's not many out there.
Oh no, the Gape Gang, they're more sort of the war boys in Mad Max. Yes, they're very pale, but also very muscular.
Okay, fair enough. I stand corrected. But what were these volunteers doing, and in what kind of conditions?
We don't know. I've been trying to get in contact with them. A lot of them we've not heard from. Some of them who did manage to leave the church refused to talk to me. They say they're too scared. I assume that's from some sort of non-disclosure agreement.
Definitely not the fear of the GGs kicking down their door.
I don't think so. Like I say, there's legally no connection between the GG and the Gapes campaign or Mr. Richard Miller.
But what of the connection between the Miller Data Centre and the Mike Gapes campaign?
Again, I can't say that because there are rumours that Gapes campaigned strongly to have that data centre built, and if it turns out he was using taxpayer money to collect data for some sort of political campaign, that could cause a massive fuss. That could actually bring him down as an MP. So legally, I can't say that Michael Gapes used £8.7 million of taxpayer money to make a bizarre data centre where volunteers were seen gaunt, scratching at the windows. It was humming all night. Lots of mysterious stuff going on there. I can't legally say that Gapes is behind it.
Well, I'm quite right. We couldn't possibly entertain the idea that Mike Gapes could be brought down as an MP.
Exactly. This is an evidence-based podcast and always has been.
There is no chance this man will be brought down as an MP in the next 10 days. So, I mean, Geraint, do you have any questions?
I've got a lot of questions, yeah. With regards to these Gapes Goons, the gang, is there any sort of named members, anyone that's sort of seen as a ringleader of them, that can be linked to them at all?
We don't have any names, although we have identified two groups. There's one group more numerous, a lot younger and smaller, more hyped up. They're the ones who do the actual violence. This is the GG gang. And there's the older one. Allegedly. There's the older ones tend to dress in football shirts, either West Ham or these strange sort of green and purple ones I haven't seen before.
Pictures of this strange French wig model all over them.
Yes. Those are the ones who are seen as directing the violence, and since Mr. Richard Miller disappeared, there are rumours that they split away from the GG. They're now calling themselves the real GG. And due to this GG splinter group, there's now been infighting on the streets of Ilford between the GG and the real GG.
You could say it's all very People's Front of Judea. Well, so what can you tell us about this factional war between the two wings of the Gape Goons?
No, the GG. The Gape Goons are a non-violent political body who do not engage in any violence whatsoever, legally speaking. Okay,
you're going to have to explain the distinction between the Gape Goons and the GG slightly more. I was under the impression the GG were the Gape Goons.
They could be, they might not be. Right now we're not sure. We know the Gape Goons don't wear the GG masks, they don't wear the GG jerseys, which are black but with a big white GG in the middle, sort of like the old henchmen you'd see in the Batman TV show.
Wait, so what do the legitimate Gape Goons get up to then? If this is not a criminal organisation, it's the GGs who are. What do the actual Gape Goons do?
Well, the Gape Goons try to protect Mike Gapes as best they can from any Corbyn cultists, as they call them. They go around the local shops encouraging the shop owners to put Mike Gapes' leaflets up in the windows, telling them, it's best to have it in there, just in case.
Do they, just suggest to them that they donate to the campaign and so on?
Oh, yes, they're fantastic fundraisers. I mean, the amount of loose change and crumpled pound notes they come back with is really astonishing. I don't ask where they get it from, I just assume chugging, things like that. But yes, I mean, they're forever coming back with just handfuls of rolled up notes saying, here, it's for the cause. And Miller would take that and invest it back into the data centre.
Not into the campaign itself?
No, he said he was investing it in the data centre because the data centre was a great investment. Any money put in there, take it out a week later, it will have doubled in value. That's just how important the data centre is.
Did the Gape Goons, beyond the generous financial donations from Gapes' many grassroots supporters around Ilford, did they ever bring any other kind of freebies, like lots of slices of ham or packs of cigarettes from the back of a lorry, obviously a lorry which they would have legally had access to, or fur coats, or just anything that, again, could be exchanged for capital and then invested in the Miller Centre?
What they did do was they would give out a lot of vape juice. I'm a big vaper myself. It's not like any other juice I've seen. I didn't recognise the label, which was just a white label written on in biro. I'm not sure where they got it from. I've heard good things about it, but, I'm brand loyal. But they have been giving out a lot of vape juice. Interestingly, the GG are also have been found making their own vape juice out of piss. I don't think it's related to the Gape Goons. I think that, again, it's just a pure coincidence that the Gape Goons were giving out free vape juice at the same time the GG gang were making bootleg vape out of piss.
So, I mean, do they smoke these vapes themselves? Have they discovered that piss has a certain narcotic property, or is it just a scam?
I can't say it's a scam. I've not seen any
scam.
of them. I've not seen any of them vaping. They mostly just get adults to go into corner shops and buy cigarettes for them.
How did you know it was piss? Did you try and drink some?
It's like, I've smelt enough piss. When you're an investigative reporter, you smell enough piss, and that definitely smelled like piss to me.
Okay.
Obviously, we're starting to get a bit of a picture of Miller's operation that he had going, his big enterprise, and some of the groups associated with it. What's happened, ultimately? What's the developments been since then?
Well, the last time anyone saw Mr. Richard Miller in public, this was a few days before he officially disappeared. He was involved in an altercation in the town centre with someone wearing a seagull costume. Apparently it became quite violent, and the bystanders say Richard definitely came out the worst. The guy in the seagull costume dragged him to a bin and made him eat all the rubbish in the bin, saying, "I'll show you who eats rubbish." After that, he...
Had Miller accused this man of eating rubbish?
I don't know. Unfortunately, I wasn't on Twitter until recently, so any backstory to this I'm not aware of. All I can say is bystanders say Mr. Richard Miller ate a shitload of rubbish that day. After that, he retired back to the church, and nobody saw him until his Twitter account mysteriously went silent. He was a prolific tweeter, I believe, and that was very strange. After that, the next day, the church, that was humming for days and days and days, went absolutely silent.
I mean, were there lots of lights coming from a window of the church or anything? Did it seem like there was things happening in there, that there was something major going on?
There was the sound of things moving. I have a theory here because I looked at the plans of the church. Conservative estimates say there were up to 800 volunteers working in there. And with the 800 people and all the NATO-level data and statistical analysis equipment he had, there's no way he could have fit it into the church. I think that church had catacombs, and that they were hiding equipment in there, they were storing volunteers in there, I think because nobody saw any equipment leave the church, we saw it go in, we didn't see it come out. I think they may have been removing the equipment through the catacombs. Because my assistant, Shavonica Farmer, in the box of the Miller files, there was a key to the church. She gained entry and it was mostly empty. There was like one server farmer left, there was a disgusting bed, there was an old television and some weird cartoon about robots. The most disturbing thing was the altar, which had been desecrated. Someone had carved strange runes into it. Shavonica took a photo, and I went to the Ilford Ancient History Museum. I've got a friend there, the curator, Henrik Fowler. He helped identify it as Ancient Brittonic, and the runes roughly translate to, look at me, the milkman inside me has grown this large.
Chilling.
Oh.
Chilling message.
And so why do you think they were hiding all the equipment? And do you suspect that Miller himself is in the catacombs?
I wouldn't be surprised. We didn't see a body go. Shavonica...
No gunshots or anything heard?
No, just the humming and the usual screaming.
But it didn't sound like Miller's voice.
No, I mean, there's normally so much screaming, you can't actually discern one voice. I think if Miller was screaming, it would have just added to the general cacophony that was going in there night and day.
And what of the so-called milk tape that was leaked to the Real Politic podcast only a matter of days ago? This has been embargoed by us, because we haven't got around to releasing it yet. But this tape shows incredible discord at the heart of the Gapes campaign.
I'm not like this. I admit it. I'm not the normal MP. I'm not the normal MP.
How'd you fuck your wife?
I fuck your wife. We won't go that far.
Mike, stop. That's not nice.
That's when we start talking my language.
When was the last time you smoked a joint?
It doesn't matter. These guys want me fucking covered. I said nobody's going to cover me. I've got everything under control.
Mike?
I'm good. Is that your wife?
Yeah?
I'll tell you about my job. It lasts for 2 fucking hours.
Oh, good. If that fucking trot over there... Sorry, I'm not saying you're a fascist. Sorry. If you don't get a shot in 2 seconds, I'll knock your fucking teeth out.
You know what, Mikey?
No. I want that fucking trot back here. No, sorry. He hasn't. He drank the milk.
Everyone's allowed their downtime.
Did you just call me a trot? Really?
I'm fucking sick of politics. Cunt! Look at my record. I'm going to win. We're going to win. You've got 2 choices. You've got Corbyn's candidate. It's the same vote. If you vote Lib Dem, you're voting for that cunt because you're splitting the vote.
You're splitting the vote.
Was this possibly recorded at the Miller data centre? Possibly even on that fateful night?
It was either recorded there or in Gapes' mansion. I know Richard Miller would often take trips to the MP's mansion in Ilford South. It really
Gapes
is an
lived in a mansion.
Yeah, it's an astonishing building. At least 8 fountains that I could see. Outdoor swimming pool.
Are they
outdoor...
fountains of water or something else?
If you've ever seen the Fountain of Shame in Sicily, it was very similar to that, except all the figures were replaced with gapes.
And what of the swimming pool? Was that full of water or, again, something else?
It was covered up, I could tell you, in the summer it fucking stank.
Okay, that's all we needed to know. So yeah, about the tape, the milk tape. What does this tape show us? We can air it in full, but what analysis can you provide about what this tape reveals?
It wouldn't surprise me if it was real. According to one of the files in the Miller files, when I've managed to decode, there was a disagreement between Miller and... He's still called Fat Man in the files.
It's not very nice.
Fat Man might not be Gapes, but it did say there was a lot of disagreement on the website that was being designed for FM. Miller thought that it shouldn't, quote, look like shit and be full of misspellings. but FM insisted the website should look like it was made by a fucking moron, because he's a man of people and the people here are all fucking morons.
Okay, and was the early 2000s vibe of the website a callback to the golden years before the hard left leadership of Gordon Brown took over the Labour Party?
It wouldn't surprise me. Miller did have a lot of copies of the old websites of the New Labour MPs. It bears a striking similarity down to the misspelling, missed words, poor formatting. It really is an astonishing tribute. If you've not seen it, I think you can see it at mikegapes.org.uk. That's a real website. If you go there, that will link you to the astonishing tribute website to New Labour that Mike Gapes put together. It could be a completely different website to Fat Man's website, but I think we've got a smoking gun here that Little Boy was Richard Miller and Fat Man was Mike Gapes.
Interesting. So they had disagreements that I guess were kind of creative in nature, kind of artistic disagreements. They wanted to take the campaign's literature and promotional materials in a different direction.
Well, when you've got two geniuses like Miller and Gapes, it's like, Lennon and McCartney or Giant Babber and Inoki. There's always going to be disagreements, but at the end, I think they did love each other very much.
Do you think that there could be in the future a reunion of Gapes and Miller? These two could work together again?
Yes, if and I'm sure when Mr. Richard Miller turns up, it's going to be like the situation with Jane's Addiction, where the singer demanded all the credit and all the money, and Mr. Richard Miller would just have to go along with that.
If there even is a Mr. Richard Miller anymore, I suppose, is the question. The Milk tape. So that showed, again, real disagreements between Gapes and Miller. And it shows a real kind of culture of locker room banter, of, you could say, kind of toxic masculinity at the heart of the Gapes campaign. There's always...
Well, I would go that far. Gapes is a great feminist. I've not heard the tape myself. I doubt he would say anything derogatory about women.
We're going to have to play the tapes because, frankly, I think some of the stuff in this tape is in the public interest, but, frankly, it doesn't bear repeating. Comments about people's wives and so on.
Yes, I'm sure he's complimenting people's wives. He often did it.
Gapes also dismissive of allegations that he has smoked joints, which, there's images online.
I've never personally seen Mike Gapes smoke a joint. He did stink of weed a lot, but I never saw him smoke a joint.
And what do you think of the efforts to undermine Mr. Gapes' campaign, the dirty tricks? You don't think that maybe his enemies had a mole within the campaign? And you don't suspect that maybe that mole was Mr. Richard Miller, and that Gapes discovered this?
I'd be very surprised if there was a mole. Mr. Richard Miller, whenever I met him, he would insist we get fully nude, just so nobody was wired up. And okay. I'm assuming he did the same thing with his meeting with Gapes and anyone else who would meet on the Gapes team. It would have to be done fully in the nude.
But how do you know that he hadn't secreted it somewhere?
Well, I don't, but I mean, he would make us do jumping jacks just to make sure. So
would
if they had secreted
would he partake in the jumping jacks?
Oh yeah, most vigorously. He'd always insist on doing more than anyone else just to prove he was the alpha in the room.
And would Gapes be forced to participate in this, or was it generally assumed that Mr. Gapes was not undermining his own campaign? Which, to me, I think better safe than sorry.
I'm sure Gapes did his best.
So you don't think that he was wearing a wire?
I'm sure he was wearing a wire. I'm sure he wasn't reporting on his own campaign to the Corbyn cultists. I mean, there's no doubt in my head he was an MI5 operative and always wearing a wire.
So that,
but,
okay, so
that's
the
Queen and Country.
Okay, yeah, allegedly.
It's just another example of his strong moral consistency over his career, if anything.
I mean, what do you think of all the dirty tricks then? Because there's been some really dirty tricks played against Gapes on this campaign. For example, there's the URLs that have been stolen. There's mikegapes.co.uk, which redirects to some troll Russian podcast. There's mikegapes.net, mikegapes.net, which redirects to Sam Tarry's campaign website. There's mikegapes.org.uk, which is really funny because it just redirects to a smiling Gapes with his coat over his shoulder saying, "Be right back," as in when he's re-elected MP of Ilford South. Incredibly optimistic. Whoever did that is a proper bastard, but that's not the only thing. There's been some really nasty stuff, you know, people taking a piss out of him online with videos in The Guardian. That was a very dirty trick, all those Guardian columns slagging him off. Michael Crick did that video making fun of him getting in on the trolling business as well.
There's just no place for it in the modern game, is there?
And then, of course, finally, again, some troll Russian podcast surreptitiously tricked Gapes into doing an interview with them.
Well, that's just despicable, isn't it?
Do you think that he needs the media management of Richard Miller? Do you think if Miller was there, Gapes never would have fallen for this ploy?
I think he's definitely seemed a bit more rattled since Miller left. I mean, you saw this interview with Michael Gapes. I mean, he looked in an absolute state. His hair was long because Mr. Richard Miller would normally cut it. I assume he hadn't showered himself because Mr. Richard Miller would often complain to me about having to shower Mike Gapes.
The smell of sour milk just overwhelming.
Well, yeah, Mr. Richard Miller, in one of the Miller files, he speaks about Mike's magic milk he would give him. Actually, I wonder if this is linked to Mike Gapes falling apart. Mike's magic milk was just allegedly falling apart. It was just milk with Percocet, lithium, Xanax, and ketamine ground up into it.
Man, he's got the perkies going.
Yeah,
Lithium.
According to the notes, it helped keep Mike calm and focused. If Mike's coming off that cold turkey, he's not going to be calm and he's not going to be focused.
So is this basically all he takes? He doesn't like... Well, alright, so you said he smelt of weed sometimes. So do you think he maybe takes this and then a joint to wind down? Or is this a kind of really get on the level kind of thing? Like it gets him a bit up, a bit down. You know, Miller possibly had a role in this cocktail that has allegedly been provided.
Oh yeah, I mean, Miller was the inventor. He called it Miller's Magic Milk for Mike.
Great alliteration.
Yeah, you know, he wanted to keep Mike focused. He knew Mike had a bit of a temper and he needed to calm down with that Xanax, with that ketamine. So yeah, this was definitely the invention of Mr. Richard Miller. And I think Mike possibly just thought it was normal milk, so he's drinking normal milk now, wondering, why isn't this calming me down like it used to? Now it's just making me angry.
He's probably just drinking even more milk than usual. Just knocking back with stuff, hoping to get a fix.
That would explain the swelling we're seeing in his head.
Apparently, speaking of Gapes' temper, our undercover operatives told me that today he was late for their interview because he was tweeting. He loves to post.
That wouldn't surprise me. He's a great communicator.
One of the best speakers in Parliament. I can scarcely think of a speech as iconic as the milk speech by any parliamentarian in recent years.
Oh yeah, interestingly, coming back to that, I mentioned the milkman before.
Of course, yeah.
Yes, the curator, he did actually give me some more information about the milkman, as the ancient Bretons called him. He showed me actually a tablet they had in the museum. It was dated back to the 8th century BC. Sadly, it was incomplete. The bottom had broken off. It was written in a Proto-Celtic, which Heinrich was an expert in. And it discusses an ancient evil spirit called the Milkman, who the ancient people, they believed he'd take over the clan chief when a youngster issued a challenge. When you were possessed by the Milkman, your skin would become pink and red, blotchy, looking diseased. The eyes would turn small and black, much like the eyes of a shark, and recede back into the head as the head continues to swell. The host's voice would become high-pitched and strained, almost a shriek at times. He'd become overcome with anger, paranoia, act violently. The host would also become obsessed with milk. He would have frequent outbursts about the importance of milk, accompanied by wild arm movements as if he was trying to gather things in. At the bottom of the tablet, it does talk about the opposite of the milkman, who was a benevolent spirit. Most of this information is gone. The only information we had was the name Cam Quay Dant Ligero. It roughly translates to the gay frog.
I can't think of anyone who sounds like either of those figures.
No,
right
these are
there.
just completely outlandish images, really. A different time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. This shit just hasn't held up, man. The mythology of those days,
Yeah.
dated.
But yes, that's what Mikhail Gaping told me. Fortunately, he died a
Was that
couple of
Mikhail
days.
Gaping?
Oh no, so Mikhail Gaping, I'll get to him. He was the coroner who found Heinrich, the independent coroner who did a report on Heinrich after he died a couple of days ago. It's very sad because Heinrich was a good friend of mine. I didn't know he was suffering with depression, but apparently he stabbed himself in the chest with a shit-covered knife, put a noose around his neck, connected it to the radiator, tied his own hands behind his back and jumped through a window. But yeah, according to the independent Mr. Mikhail Gaping, suicide.
Did you talk to Mr. Gapes about that?
I
Even
know-
if he doesn't know himself, he might have an official line from some contacts of his.
I know Mr. Gapes is on the board of the museum, and his official statement just said, very sad.
When was the priceless rune from ancient times acquired for the museum in relation to when Mr. Gapes joined the board?
I believe it was shortly before he joined the board. It was 1992, I think. It was about the same time Michael Gapes became an MP and thought, okay, I'll get involved in the culture. I'll join this museum. And he was very taken with the tablet. He would look at it for hours every day,
Interesting.
just
Have you-
staring at it, unblinking.
Have you seen any evidence of sort of pagan occult or simply cult activity from the Gape Gang or the GGs or the provisional GGs or whatever they're called?
There was an incident recently with the GGs where they were wearing like weird cow masks. It was actually during a stabbing. They stabbed the proprietor of a local Korean restaurant, Mr. Dozan, whilst he was singing karaoke. And again, it was with a shit-covered knife. Possibly a coincidence or possibly not. It wasn't the knife that hurt Mr. Dozan so much, it was the shit that got into his system, and also the fact he finished singing the song before he went to the hospital.
Committed. What song?
Yeah, I think it might have been that Japanese one, Sukiyaki.
I'm not familiar. I'm sure we
It's a
can
good,
find
it's a
clip.
good song. I don't think it's got anything to do with him not putting a leaflet up in his window after being warned 3 times by the Gape goons. But
You
it
mean
couldn't have
gently
hurt.
asked.
Gently asked. It couldn't have hurt, but there's no link to that. It was probably just one of those random stabbings that people in cowheads do.
So it was the cowheads that led you to connect this with kind of ritualistic activity. Was there anything else to suggest that maybe there was something ritualistic going on?
Well, we knew it was the GG. They were wearing their black jerseys with the big white GGs on there.
Yeah.
On one of the servers that was left in the data center, we looked it up and it had plotted on it the GG attacks from the last 5 days. When connected together, they formed a pentagram with the Gates mansion in the middle.
Okay, that is some spooky shit. Just very quickly as an aside, I think we need to hear more on this, but very quickly as an aside, what type of shit was it on the knives? Was it
human.
Was it human shit, not cow shit?
It was definitely human shit. Ancient human shit.
Again,
They
did you
couldn't...
taste it?
I didn't taste it. This is just going on the police reports.
Okay.
They said it could be
Are
literally
you sure they can be
centuries old.
trusted? Centuries old human shit. Okay, but
Centuries-
this just gets more suspicious
Centuries
by
old
the minute.
human shit could have gone even as far back as the 8th century BC.
This is almost joining up together like a pentagram that leads to Mike Gapes' mansion. So, can you tell us more, actually, about the evidence you uncovered from the Miller data center?
There wasn't much. There was just that server with those on. I think Miller might have been trying to predict the next attacks, actually, because he plotted out where they were going to happen. And it must have been a very good algorithm, because that was exactly where the attacks did happen. I think he was possibly trying to predict where the GGs would attack next, plot it, and then alert the police. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to alert the police, and the GG did stage attacks in all the places that he had plotted on his server using a complicated algorithm, I assume.
Have any of the GGs thought to target Gapes himself yet at this point, the ones who sided with Miller in the split?
I'm sure they might like to, but Gapes is constantly with his bodyguard dressed as a protective mosquito. When anyone comes close to Gapes, he'll use his prosthetic stinger to sort of sweep them away. He really is a huge person. I don't know what's under that mask, but that's Mr. Michael Gapes' bodyguard, the protective mosquito. He brought him into the campaign after there were troubles with a person dressed as a seagull, possibly the same one who forced Mr. Richard Miller to eat an entire bin full of rubbish.
Can you tell us actually about this spoiler campaign in Ilford South that's been going on? Because, I mean, I understand it's affiliated to the, from what I understand, oligarch-funded Be Kind Online hashtag campaign.
Yes, well, I met Simon once, about a year ago, maybe 2. It was at one of his comedy shows where would,
cutting-edge stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was being kind, but not online. In real life, he was giving a voice to all the comedians who don't normally get a voice because the liberal elite say, sorry, you're not woke, you're not PC, you're not getting a show on BBC 2 at 9 p.m. every night on weeknights.
So,
but yes,
Andrew Doyle, Ricky Gervais, oppressed people.
Yes, the poor, the downtrodden, the left behind.
Yeah, Konstantin Kissin, who has the misfortune to both be very right-wing and also have a surname that rhymes with pissing for all the trolls out there. It's terrible what these people have to put up with, and I think Simon was doing a good thing by platforming him.
Speaking of names that rhyme with things, Mr. Richard Miller was very proud of his nickname, the Condom Filler. That was linked to his safe sex campaign, hashtag Safe Sex Kids, where he'd go around the schools and encourage children to have safe sex. He confided to me this was just because he really hates children. He wanted them to have bad sex, but also he didn't want any more children. So he thought, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'll make them have bad sex, and also they won't produce any more children. One of the Miller files was his FetLife profile, where he did specify he wouldn't wear a condom under any circumstances. He referred to himself as a data daddy or a dom daddy. His bio just said, I'll cut up your meals, I'll read you bedtime stories, I'll take you to Disneyland, and then I'll come on your face.
And what are the rumours that Mr. Miller was sending pictures of Piglet from Winnie the Pooh, but with a voluptuous figure to Gapes' opponents throughout the campaign as just kind of abuse, really?
I wouldn't say it's abuse. I mean, Mr. Richard Miller loved that photo. He had like so many framed pictures of it in his flat before he moved into the church. I think he was doing that as a sort of an olive branch, saying, look, here's a picture I really like. I'm human like you. I'm sure you like this picture too. Let's get together and talk about Piglet if she were a shapely woman.
Not abuse, then. Actually good. Do we have anything else to talk about? Because I'm aware I don't want us to go on too long so that I can edit all this really quickly.
I think that's all I've got in the Miller files right now, and just having a look through. That's all we've currently managed to decode, but please follow me on Twitter at Jimothy Baker, where as I continue to crack these files, and I will crack these files, I will be continuing to investigate this, and I will be uploading anything that isn't too shocking onto my Twitter account.
Okay, excellent. A couple of quick things. Do you feel that Seamus Milne is personally involved in the efforts to turn Mike Gapes into a figure of ridicule?
When you say involved, I'm sure he's not personally involved because he's probably got bigger fish to fry. It wouldn't surprise me if one of his underlings, like Matt Zarb Cousins or Owen Jones, people who are not legally employed by him, but I'm sure receive a monthly stipend from him. It wouldn't surprise me if they had a hand in all of this.
And do you feel personally, as a data journalist, an investigative reporter, do you feel that the links between Mr. Milne and Russia that Gapes repeatedly emphasises, including in his exclusive interview of Realpolitik, hold up? Do you see these as a major threat to our democracy?
I'm not sure about national democracy. I really only focus on the local elections. I don't think it will
But
affect
if
the
you are
local
aware
elections
that, but
too
sorry.
much.
Let me stop you there. Are you aware, Mr. Gape? I'm doing a Paxman Andrew Neil thing here. Are you aware, Mr. Gapes is supposed to be, according to his campaign material, a local man with a national and international voice.
Well, yeah, he's very loud. Have you ever heard him? No doubt you can hear him in other countries. I've seen him blow up a water balloon until it burst. He does it for every speech, just to show how loud he can speak, how strong his lungs are. So yeah, when he says he has a national and international voice, I think that's just a reference to his amazingly loud speaking voice.
You can confirm they can hear him over at the St. Petersburg troll factories.
Oh,
Finally,
I'm sure they can.
in terms of the Gape goons and their various permutations, have you seen possibly a very angry man who looked like he was in his late 40s carrying a bucket full of what appear to be human teeth around residential streets in the Ilford area?
Oh yeah, that's just Keith. He's no problem.
I think that might be an alias, Geraint.
Yeah. He goes by Keith, he goes by Martin, he goes by Phil. He's got quite a few names, this lad.
He goes by that cunt with the massive forehead. So I've been told by my sources on the ground in Ilford.
He's a very dangerous man anyway. I would keep him at a distance.
Right, so thank you so much, Mr. Jimothy Baker, for joining us today to talk about the political situation in Ilford and bringing your expertise to the table and giving us the lowdown on what has been, a real nail-biting contest.
Oh yes, well thank you for having me, Jack and Grant. It's good to get on here. I know Mr. Richard Miller was on Twitter, so if anyone knew him from Twitter, please get in contact with me. I'll be putting my phone number on the Twitter account if I haven't already, otherwise you can DM me. Please get in contact with me at Jimothy Baker if you have any information about the disappearance of Richard Miller, any theories you'd like to share. We really need to get to the bottom of this, hopefully before the election is done, so we can just sweep it under the rug, out of sight, and focus on what should be a nail-biting election.
Absolutely.
Well said, and we wish you the absolute best in your investigations, of course.
100%. We hope you are the man who finally finds Richard Miller, because it's been a couple of weeks now. We're getting worried. I was worried within about a day, because that guy was always there, and now he's never there, and I miss him, quite frankly.
Yeah, the
Richard,
data
come
the
home.
data's not flowing, and we're all suffering from it.
I mean,
in
he'd
election
often
time.
say the data must flow. The data must flow.
We all love you, Richard. We all love you. Come back. Come home.
Yes.